Okay, so we are in our study of Proverbs, and we are on page 11, ready for the discussion questions. And we were just talking about how one of the last points before the discussion questions kind of brought up some ideas surrounding this idea of bribery. Because the verse we looked at in particular was Proverbs 21, verse 14.
Matt, could I interrupt just a minute?
Yes, sir.
I don't know whether I got on here a little late, but I don't know whether you updated everybody on Les Fiber or not.
Sure, go ahead.
Les passed away on Monday afternoon. So I just wanted to share that with everyone. And his calling hours and funeral are tomorrow. So just thought I'd pass that on and just pray for the family.
And we're thinking of you. We know that was a good friend of yours, Don.
Yeah.
Okay, so this idea of bribery came up in one of our supporting verses in our lesson here, and it was from Proverbs chapter 21, verse 14, where it says, "A gift in secret averts anger, and a concealed bribe, strong wrath." And I kind of had quite a few questions in my mind about, bribes are, I think our knee-jerk reaction to bribes should be that they're bad, and they are. I did some study on that, and I found where this word in particular, the Hebrew word behind this word bribe here, where that was used, and it is sometimes used and translated as present and gift, and that's a point that Karen brought up last week, that it can be used in diverse ways. But I think sometimes when it's structured like it is here, talking about a concealed bribe, and then even coupled with a gift in secret, sort of lends it towards this idea of maybe a negative kind of a hidden bribe. But I looked it up, and there are 23 verses, or 23 times in 21 verses that it comes up. And it's always negative to take a bribe. So, you think about, especially with the authority differential, someone, maybe a judge is in charge of things, and then someone's seeking justice. And if this judge takes a bribe to subvert the justice of this person that needs justice, then that is an abomination. And that's over and over and over, those things are said. And it's almost always this phrase, to take a bribe is bad. Do not take a bribe. No one should take a bribe. He who takes bribes are bad. All these things about that, on and on through these verses that I had brought up. But then there's a couple of these where, it kind of seems, like this verse. And I guess I kind of wonder, it's maybe a discussion question, thought still. The person in the position of authority is responsible to not subvert justice. Now, obviously, we don't want to be party to subverting justice either. But the scenario I had in my head was, if your justice is being subverted, like the scenario I gave, if you encounter some dishonest guards or something that are wrongfully requiring you to give them money to pass through whatever, the troll bridge or whatever. Well, hey, if you give them the money, you may be successful in getting out of that situation. From the practical standpoint, that seems to be perhaps what they're saying, but obviously subverting justice is an abomination, and we never want to be part of that. So I'll just throw it out there. Maybe Darren, maybe that jogs your memory or thoughts on what you were thinking about.
Yeah, actually it did. I was looking at it, and if you keep this verse in the context of what we're studying about, then it leans itself towards, well, let's just go back to letter B. This is in others, and how we are able to control our anger and its destructive effects on within others. And point one was respond gently, and then this point two is bring a peace offering. And so it does kind of lean us toward, at least the writer of this book is anyways trying to get us to think more of this bribe as not as an underhanded evil sort of a thing, but more of a peace offering to appease the person, or in other words, and that was kind of my thought was with the verse, a gift in secret. My version says pacifies or appeases anger, and a bribe behind the back, it appeases. It doesn't say that, but I think it implies that it's appeasing strong wrath. So it's one of these situations where sometimes we might give in and give somebody what they want to win the battle, or to lose the battle but win the ultimate war, kind of a thing. That was where my head was going. I could be off in left field, but that's kind of where my head was.
Well, along with that, Karen's comments last week really aroused my curiosity on this verse. And I thought that she had some good comments. My first thoughts on this to begin with, as I've studied more deeply in this, were just way off in left field. And I've looked at a number of different commentators and so forth, and it depends a lot on the version that you're reading when you read this. The NIV reads, "A gift given in secret soothes anger, and a bribe concealed in the cloak pacifies great wrath." To begin with, that's what I was getting out of it. But then I go on to the ESV reads, "A gift in secret averts anger, and a concealed bribe strong wrath." Then you go to what the Septuagint reads, "A secret gift claims anger." Pardon me. "A secret gift calms anger, but he that forbears to give stirs up strong wrath." It's almost like there's a contradiction there.
So,
And if you're not careful, if you don't keep it in the proper context, you're going to miss the whole point of this. But I want to thank Karen for stirring me up.
yeah, well, I if it wasn't clear from my earlier comments, I was intending to thank Karen as well for for her comments that were memorable and helped me think through this as well from last week. But I think what's going on with what you just pointed out, Don, and I can't speak to the Septuagint part, but it's common. It's a common structure in this Hebrew poetry, this parallelism we've talked about, and we see a lot in Proverbs. It won't necessarily, it'll have this one line and then this other line, and they're parallel. It won't necessarily use the verb again in the second of those two phrases.
Yeah.
I think that's what's happening here. A gift in secret averts anger, and a concealed bribe, blank, strong wrath. We're supposed to, in our minds, fill in the blank and use avert or something like that again. And the NIV and other translations will insert that second verb because we're Americans and that's weird. We need a verb there, right? We speak English. So that, there's some difficulty there. So they're being a bit paraphrastic in inserting that verb, but yet that's what it means, and that helps us to understand it. Whereas the ESV is trying to be more formal in the word-to-word type of a translation. Does that help? But I don't know about the one that had the contradictory. I mean, that's either way, it's interpretive. If you're going to insert a contradictory verb, I feel like that's a bridge too far in my mind, but I don't know.
Well, it seems to me I'm kind of like Darren. I've taken a position on this, right or wrong. I'm not sure, but it seems to me that the point of the latter part of that verse 14 may be that withholding a gift until it can be used as a bribe to gain favor at a later time only arouses anger. So I'm not sure that that's correct either. But everybody's entitled to their own,
Sure,
whatever you want to call it.
your own thoughts on it. Yeah. Okay. Well, have we beat the dead horse, or are there other thoughts on on the bribe topic here? This is kind of a little bonus round from last week, but by all means, if you had maybe had done some research or had thoughts, share them now. Share them now, and don't forever hold your peace. Our workbook actually brings this back up. So on I think it's page 31, there's a lesson on the topic of business, and this comes up again. So we'll come back to this if you want to revisit it again. Well, whether you want to revisit it or not, we're going to talk about it again. So, okay. All right, then. Well, let's move to the discussion questions. And, as we've spent already 3 weeks talking through these verses and these ideas, hopefully we've synthesized our thinking with these ideas of anger. And so drawing from that and from your life experiences, I want to encourage everyone to participate with what's on your mind on these questions. Number 1, is anger ever a commanded response? Is it ever good to be angry? Would be maybe another way to ask that.
Well, I found an example and an inference. And the example is in Mark 3, where Jesus is looking around at them with anger, grieved at the hardness of their hearts. And he has the guy with the withered hand stretch forth his hand. Well, Jesus was angry at the hardness of their hearts. So I just see that as an example. And then an inference being the Ephesians 4 passage, be angry and do not sin. That infers that there will be times when we are angry. I don't know if that addresses whether it's good to be angry or not, but it's not an evil. It's not wrong to be angry.
Yeah, particularly, I guess the Ephesians 4:26 is the one in particular I zeroed in on. We're being told there by Paul, be angry, but and do not sin. So there's tempered with, don't be a maniac, but there are things that we're going to be angry about. Go ahead and be angry, but don't be sinful. Manage that well in the ways that we've been talking about. Don't bottle it up, and don't vent it out and be a disaster and yell at people. Make sure we're handling it the proper way. Don't let the sun go down in your anger.
I think we can consider Paul and John Mark, the anger that arose between them, and they found a way to resolve the situation, and later on the whole thing was turned around. But in what I guess Paul was had a problem with John Mark, but they didn't sin. So there wasn't anything wrong with their feelings, evidently, but they didn't allow it to take them in a course of sin.
Yeah, we don't read about Paul punching John Mark or anything, right? It's just they had a disagreement on who all should go on this trip based on his past performance, and parted ways. And there's no indication that they were hateful about it. And as you point out later on, of course, they are apparently resolved, and Paul's writing asking for his help and that sort of thing. So, have you been angry? Make it personal, maybe. Is there a time in your life, maybe recently or whatever, that you've needed to be angry and you were, and you didn't lose your control?
Hey, Matt,
Yeah, Bruce.
what kind of got me on this question is a commanded response. Now, is a commanded response what you said before, be angry and sin not? Is that a command?
Well, it's an imperative, the way it's written. It's, do this, be angry. I don't know. I'm not sure if that means we need to put that on our checklist and make sure we're angry today. I don't know if that's the point.
As one of the 10 commandments?
No, but that's where I think the question was going for a verse like that. But I don't think that means that we're, that we have to do it every day or something. But I think it's just acknowledging hey, sometimes, we're human and things aren't going to go well and we're going to get upset. Well, go ahead and be angry, but don't
but
sin.
that goes directly against James 1:19, quick to hear, slow to anger, and slow to speak.
Well, does slow mean never?
So I didn't, I know, Jesus was angry with the money changers.
Uh-huh.
And as you said, Paul was angry about John Mark. But also that apparently they did not sin, and later Paul recognized the value. John Mark was valuable to him, and that was reconciled between them. But I guess I had the problem with this being a commanded response. That's all.
Yeah, I don't know. I've tried to broaden the question personally because I don't know if that's necessarily where I wanted to go with the question either. But I mean, back to your passage in James, I'm looking at it here. Know this, my beloved brothers, let every person be quick to hear, slow to speak, slow to anger. And so I guess it's notable maybe that he didn't say and always listen and never talk back and never be angry. He didn't say that. He's like moderate, don't be a maniac, I think is what don't blow off the handle, fly off the handle when things happen. For the anger of man does not produce the righteousness of God. We shouldn't be all about anger. That's not that shouldn't be our characteristic,
Matt, I think more the command is more what to do when you are angry. I think it's, the part about be angry, but sin not. So there is righteous anger. As I said, Jesus showed anger. Anger is an emotion. And it's, emotions in and of themselves aren't bad. But how we deal with those emotions our response to our emotions can be good or bad. But the emotions themselves aren't good or bad, because everybody feels those. Like when Jesus was angry in the temple and he drove everybody out of there, Jesus lived without sin, so he was angry and he didn't sin. So, the key to the game is, along with the anger, don't sin as a result of your anger.
Control.
Yeah, in control of your anger, as opposed to letting your anger control you, which I guess I've been in both of those situations, both ends of that before.
Well, sure, we've all done this poorly before, right? That's why it's a challenge, and that's why there's instructions about it. So yeah, I think you make a good point. It's how we control this and how we manage our anger. Other thoughts on that? All right.
I'm ashamed to say that I think more often when I've been angry, it's because my rights have been stepped on. And I don't think that that's righteous anger. I mean, even if I'm in the right, I need to just turn all that over to God. I don't know. I think I really need to examine my motives when I'm angry. Because the things I see, the examples in the Bible, the good examples of righteous anger, aren't necessarily the kinds of things I've seen in my life.
Yeah, that's a good point. I just scanning through my mind the times that Jesus was angry, right? Our best examples. I mean, he's not typically seen as angry because he was insulted. I mean, he was insulted sometimes, but it's more like you're dishonoring the temple and God, and of course he was God, so maybe that was personal, right? But yeah, it wasn't petty things, right? Like you called me a name or whatever, right? And we would get upset about that, or someone's trying to take our honor from us or in some way, and we feel slighted. That doesn't seem to be the theme of why we should be angry. All right, well, let's look at question 2 here. Should a man's emotions be his master or servant? And I guess just lump these all together. How can he allow them to be his master, and how can he make them his servant? So what ought to be our relationship with our emotions? Kind of an obvious one, I guess, right? We should not be cast at the whims of our emotions. We should self-control is one of the themes of the whole book of Proverbs, right? We should be let's see, our emotions should be our servant, right? Now that's easier said than done, because when we get upset or whatever it is, we tend to get carried away, but we have to work on controlling that. And how can you do that? How can you make your emotion your servant? Maybe you get a rubber band on your hand and when you realize. Go ahead, Mike.
What I think of is when God confronted Cain, and he said, "Tell them sin's desire is for you, but you should rule over it." Just kind of that. I think the same thing comes into play with our emotions, because Cain let his emotions, envy, get the better of him, and pride, anger, and they overcame him rather than him ruling over that. So I think it goes along the same lines there, you know, as far as this goes.
Yeah. We might look to prayer, if we're getting carried away, and if we can take a moment and pray to God and for help, and recognizing maybe we're getting out of control and we need some help, ask for the help. Maybe asking for help from our brother or sister in Christ to talk it through. Help to iron sharpen iron there.
To me, I think it depends on thinking. If I'm not thinking, then it becomes my master. If I'm thinking clearly, then it's my servant. So I need to take the time to not be rash and to be thinking, clear thinking, walk away and think about it. But that doesn't mean walk away and keep stewing, because that gets bad too.
Right.
But and I've brought this up a lot of times too, but the more we pour in things like the kindness and tenderheartedness and forgiveness, the more we pour those inside us, the less room for anger there is. So, there's Paul has a lot of those lists all through his letters. I love, lists of things I'm supposed to be thinking about and filling up with. So this would be a good time to look at those.
My mind's going back to the passage that Bruce brought up, James 1:19. So the question is, how can we make our emotions our servant? How can we control our emotions? Be quick to hear, be slow to speak, and slow to anger. And those all kind of connect together, don't they, right? If someone's saying stuff, maybe we're upset and we just want to say it right back, and no. Be quick to hear, but be slow to speak. And then I think that all helps us lead to being slow to anger, because we're putting the brakes on all that craziness. So that's the practical thing.
I thought what you said made a lot of sense though, Matt. Maybe you need to just take a moment in a quiet place and pray or whatever. Sometimes we talk about these things and we know it's what we need to do, control your anger, but what are the strategies? Chris said, walk away. And I just said to my family, yeah, literally sometimes, like we had a day at our house today. I wasn't angry at any of them, but we had a day and it was only 20 degrees out, but I took the dog and I walked 2.5 miles. You need strategies. Maybe you need some music. So turn on your hymns, or if you listen to something that's uplifting or soothing, maybe you need to take a walk. Maybe, I mean, in our case tonight, it was, and we're ordering a pizza. You know, I mean, it has to be practical. It's not just all, oh, you know, just be so strong, you can control this, be a good person. You better have some strategies for when the days hit, because days will hit us. And if I need quiet time to pray or take a hot shower, even if I don't really need a shower because I had one an hour ago, or you know, music, like I said, maybe I need to not turn on a radio, what I might listen to for relaxation, but find a tape or some hymns or something that's more uplifting and praiseworthy that sets my mind again. So I think sometimes, especially with Proverbs, we sit here and we say, yeah, you know, but it's very abstract and general until we come up with specific strategies that we say, I need to take these steps, or I am going to get carried away, or I am going to get emotional, or I am going to get whatever it is, depression, anxiety, fear, anger, all of those emotions can take over if we don't learn some strategies between us and God, and maybe self-care and de-stress strategies too, to kind of keep our mind centered where it needs to be and help us put things in perspective and know what's really important. And when, like Chris said, we need to let go of some things that might really upset us and get under our skin, but in the scheme of really long-term important things in life, they're meaningless, and they might seem important, and they might be at the moment, but you've got to find a way to put those in perspective, whatever strategies that takes.
Maybe having a, you know, like some, it used to be popular to have a "What would Jesus do" bracelet, you know, and that's a good thing to think about, you know. But if you really struggle with anger, maybe you need a quick to hear, slow to speak, slow to anger bracelet, or an app that you know, or your wallpaper on your computer or your phone or something to say that.
Mike has a punching bag in the garage, and it's perfect for his personality. I mean,
Yeah.
he needs that sometimes. He has a punching bag, and there are days that, or, you know, something has gone wrong or something has upset him. And it's good that he has that punching bag. You know?
It's for exercise too, though. I mean,
Yeah. Well, as kids, a lot of times, you know, hey, don't punch your brother. If you need to punch your brother, punch the pillow, you know. Well,
Hey,
we
Matt.
don't necessarily get completely out of that, right? If we still have aggression, you know, hey, we need a punching bag. Go ahead, Bruce.
Yeah, Karen triggered a memory that I have had in the past. Oh, gee, it must have been 15, 20 years ago. I gave a lesson on anger, and I had read a book, and this gentleman was saying that he used baseball as an example. And what it was is the pitcher threw a high inside fastball and just about knocked the guy in the head, okay, the batter in the head. And I recall, I believe it was Omar Vizquel that charged the pitcher with that inside fastball that almost hit him. And of course, the author was saying it's not enough for you to think about, you know, I'm not going to do that. You have to, he said you have to change the tape within your brain. You're instead of charging the mound and the pitcher to do battle with him, be bound and determined, and take self-control now to be determined that the next pitch you're gonna get a hit. And that's what he was kind of saying. It's not enough to say, I'm not going to do this, but you've got to think ahead, if it's possible, to change that response that's kind of like a knee-jerk reaction. So it was interesting, and I think it went pretty well.
Yeah, that's a good point. What's our script? And it depends on maybe what we're surrounded with. If we're raised in a hostile family, and everyone yells at everyone, and that's kind of our script, right? And so as we get aligned with Christ, we need to realize that, hey, just because this is what I've always done, that's not good. I need to actually, do these things that the Bible is prescribing. And how do we do that, right? We have to reprogram our minds and be filled with the Spirit, and it's hard work. We need to help each other with that. Amanda had a comment about you can't pour from an empty cup. Use the analogy on the airline where if you're gonna have a deep compressurized cabin, you're supposed to put the oxygen mask on yourself first, because if you try to help someone else first, you might pass out and then you're all dead. So we need to make sure that we're healthy so that we can help others as well. Maybe you want to comment on what you said, Amanda. I brought up airplanes and stuff. Maybe not. That's fine.
No, you did good.
Okay. All right. Other thoughts about making our emotions subservient to us and not letting them rule us? All right. Number 3, does the solution to the sinful abuse of anger lie in attempting to turn off the emotion? Must it be turned off or controlled? And that sort of riffs back on some things that we've talked about in our lesson. What's your response to that?
I wrote down something. I'm just going to read it because I'll mess it up otherwise. But we need a controlled response. We should be angry about some things. Abortion, we should be angry about that. Discrimination, we should be angry about that. But our response must glorify God. This mentality of I gave them a piece of my mind and encouraging other people. I think Dee brought this up last week, but sometimes we encourage other people, like, oh, I'm so glad. I'm glad you told them off because I've been feeling the same way. We shouldn't encourage it in ourselves, and we shouldn't encourage it in others. That just makes everything worse. But stifling anger just turns up the heat. And so then I was thinking about Jesus on the cross, and he was being mocked by the soldiers, by the high priest. He was being mocked by all kinds of different classes of people. The others that were being crucified, he was being mocked. And he did not have the energy to waste on anger. It seems to me that he had some very important things left to say, but his strength was giving out. And, I think we kind of need to look at our own anger that way. It is a really big waste of our energy. He was not boiling up. He was not hanging on the cross, getting madder and madder and madder, which I think sometimes is the way we are. He knew that the anger of man does not produce the righteousness of God. So all he was focused on was glorifying his Father. And that's where our head needs to be.
Very good. This kind of came up in conversation yesterday at the table. This is something that maybe maybe we're kind of doing right, I guess, in our family. And if I equate anger with yelling, something that we've tried to do fairly early on with our parenting was to kind of reserve yelling at the kids for the part where they're going to get hit by a car kind of thing. So if they're running out in the street, yeah, yeah, we need them to respond to that. And the concern was that if we're just yelling all the time, or like a lot of times we're just yelling at the kids because, kids are always doing something that's making us crazy, right? Well, then, and they're not listening because it's a hum of yelling. It's just a constant hum. Then it's something severe is happening where we really need to get their attention. Well, they pay attention. So that's something we've kind of resolved to do. And that sort of plays into the idea here, obviously we get upset about things, still, but we've tried to not be characterized by yelling about everything, with the kids in particular. And that's a sense in which we're controlling, I guess, our anger. Because a lot of times that's why we yell, right? I can't believe you did that. We're yelling. So that's just a practical thing that came to mind for example. Other thoughts on number 3? All right, number 4. How can anger actually be constructive? How can it be destructive? Does the answer to those questions lie in where anger is directed? And how can that make such a difference? So what are some examples of constructive or destructive anger?
So I have a funny story about this, and this will make my mom laugh, and I bet she probably knows what I'm going to say before I even say it. So when I don't even know how old I was, maybe like 11 or 12. I think Jason was in high school, so I couldn't have been in high school, so I would have probably been middle school. So maybe 12, 13, we decided that turkeys was a wonderful idea. Little baby turkeys are so cute. Oh, they're adorable. Well, they grow up and they're not very cute. And part of showing these turkeys was you have to grab it by the legs and flip it upside down and then stick your knee kind of in the back to make it look like a delicious turkey. And I refused. The turkey was disgusting. It smelled. It was nasty. I wasn't going to touch it. I wasn't going to do it. And I was angry about it. Just got really angry. And I remember Mom, I don't even know what she said to me, but all of a sudden, and anybody that knows Jason knows he's double my size. He was at that point 6'4", 270 pounds. He was a big boy. Next thing you know, before anybody knew, I was so angry that I grabbed that turkey and I had it flipped upside down faster than any person on that show ring. And I don't know what possessed, but that you kind of get to that point where your anger leads into, you get me so angry, well, I'm just going to do it to show you that I can do it, and I can do it better than everybody. So long story short, I think Mom laughs at it hysterically now, but it was one of those, like, she was going to, you either flip that turkey or we're going to have issues. And that anger caused me to flip that stupid turkey faster than my big burly older brother. So that is my anger, constructive anger story. My anger got me to flip my turkey.
It's like an Incredible Hulk moment or something. Other thoughts or stories or ideas?
I'm thinking about Moses at Mount Sinai when he came down off the mountain to the golden calf. If he had just been like, oh, it's okay, you guys, like, these things happen. But no, he's like out here like smashing the 10 commandments that written by the finger of God that he just got, and grinding up the calf and making the people drink it. And I'm sure they never forgot that. If he had said, oh, it's okay, just like repent and it'll all be fine, like, I don't think that would have had the same effect. And he had every right to be angry in that situation for sure.
Yeah, breaking those 10 commandments. I was thinking about that recently, and I need to go back and read about that, I guess. But I always had in my head that, oh man, he broke those 10 commandments. I mean, God wrote those. That's so cool. Why did he do that? And those would be nice to still have. But they broke the covenant. The covenant was on those tablets. That was what it represented. And the people broke it. So by the time he brought it down, it was already ruined. Now, that doesn't necessarily relate to what you're saying about anger, but I just always kind of wondered about. I think my mind has kind of changed to, Moses did the right thing. It was already broken. So, other thoughts? Can anger be destructive? Obviously, we can probably think of a lot of examples of that, right? Where we get out of control and maybe we hastily say something unkind or in kind. If someone's being mean to us, we're saying it in kind rather than controlling our reaction. So where is the anger directed? Is it we're going for hate the sin and love the sinner? I wasn't entirely sure what the author was going for there. Any thoughts on that? Well, we'll go with hate the sin, love the sinner then, right? We don't want to have a ad hominem attack where we're attacking the person for their very core value. Everyone has value, but if we're upset about something, hopefully we're upset about something of substance, like Chris brought up an issue of abortion. Well, we should be against that, but we shouldn't be hateful of people that maybe have a different idea about that or whatever.
I was thinking about what Leanne said about the 10 commandments and Moses kind of spiking those and breaking them, and instead of like, oh, okay, guys, you kind of messed up. But sometimes I wonder, if you have to do something a little bit out of the ordinary to get somebody's attention, and not that you're doing it to harm them, but you're actually doing it to get a point across. I know of a certain basketball coach, not me. Well, I probably did this too, but like I heard about the famous kicking the trash can incident in the locker room to get his team motivated. Okay. And, I don't know that there's any, in fact, from what I understand, he emptied it out first. He got in the locker room before the kids did, emptied out the trash can. And then so he wouldn't be flying all over the place. Then he had all planned. His anger was all planned. So it was kind of almost like a prop to kind of motivate the team. I don't know what the rest of the story was after the incident in the locker room, but I think that was a case where he probably got their attention, if nothing else. And I remember when I was student teaching at Akron Buchtel, and I had this class was just on my last nerve, and they pushed me to the limit. And finally, I just reacted like I just became that kid from the back alleys of Barberton again. And those desks that were all chair, desk, all in one, the one in the front row, I flipped it up and over in front of everybody. And all of a sudden it got really quiet. And I said, I am about to go off now. And then after that, I had their attention, and I'm thinking, oh boy, what's going to happen next here? And it worked. But that was kind of a desperate attempt, but I was not trying to hurt anybody anyway, but I did get their attention after that. And I think if you're in control of the situation, knowing what you're doing, and I think sometimes it's like a wake-up call, like grabbing somebody by the lapels and say, look, get a hold of yourself. Or like in that movie Airplane, where somebody's going crazy, and it's like it's kind of one of those kind of moments. You're not really trying to harm somebody, but you're trying to get the situation under control. And at the moment, it might be the only way to do it. A soft answer does turn away wrath, but I'm not sure sometimes a soft answer is going to get someone's attention like it needs to. So, I don't know what everybody else thinks about that, but
there's a time for every purpose under heaven. There's a whole list of opposite things that there's different times to do different things, right? All right. Well, the next one there, number 5, when one blows up, where is all his anger directed? When one clams up, where is all his anger directed? Do either of these people tend to be good or pleasant company? Again, this is some stuff we've talked about, right? Blowing up or clamming up. Where does that anger go?
But when you blow up, it goes to the one that's closest to you, not necessarily the person that you were intending to, but sometimes it's just the person that's in proximity to you, the ones that gets the brunt of it, you know. And of course, the clamming up, it's someone that stays within you. Neither one are good, and they both will make you a grumpy person to be around.
I think you checked all the boxes on that question, Darren. Yep. We're not being very productive that way, and not very good company. Any other thoughts on number 5? Kind of leads to number 6, you know, where should anger be directed? You know, we shouldn't be, you know, venting on innocent victims, certainly, and we shouldn't be harming ourselves by bottling it up, but what's an appropriate righteous anger situation? Where should that be directed?
I'll give you a quick story on that. My mom grew up as a Baptist, and she was dating my dad at the time, and my dad convinced her to come to a gospel meeting, and the preacher, of course, that particular day just was blasting the Baptist, you know, kind of a thing, and she left there enraged. She was fuming, and she went home, and her anger was directed toward that particular preacher. But what her anger was directed towards was to prove him wrong. I'm going to go back home. I'm going to talk to my preacher, and I'm going to prove this guy wrong, because he's wrong about all the things that he said about us Baptists and whatever, you see. And so she directed that anger really in the right way in that particular sense, because she directed it back to the right things, and then ended up learning that maybe this guy is right, you know, after all. So that's kind of a long story, short version of a long story, but that's kind of how that worked with her. And I think so directing the anger in a proper spot is the key to this whole thing in a lot of cases, because if we direct it properly, it can be a productive thing. That's an example of it.
That's a good example. Channel our energy of any sort right into something good. And that's a lot of times what anger is. It's just, we're passionate about something, right? So we channel that to something good. And, you know, direct our, you know, who's the source of lies and evil, right? The devil. So rather than, even if someone is actually doing an injustice to us or to someone, you know, everyone has their soul's value, but we want the best for them. But evil needs called out, and the father of lies is the source of it.
As we're thinking about directing anger, I couldn't help but recall a comedy I had watched on TV some time ago. And the parents were trying to get their youngster to go to bed. It was time to go to bed. And they said, "No, Johnny, it's time to go upstairs and go to bed." "No. Look, now I told you to go upstairs, get into bed, because it's time to go to bed." "No." About that time, Grandpa came around the corner into the room. He says, "You get yourself up those stairs and into that bed right now as fast as you can go." That boy shot up those steps just like crazy. There's a time for the anger to be directed, and in a positive way that's not hurtful.
Yep. Yeah, and so back to Darren's example of maybe anger, maybe sometimes because we clam up, right? And then we vent out to the wrong person, right? Well, there are times when we do need to express that anger, but certainly do it to the person who's done the wrong. Or certainly in the case of a criminal act or whatever, right? You know, we as a society have a certain amount of anger toward that, and we want justice to be done in the short term as well as God's eternal plans as well.
Matt?
Yes.
I had put down, we need to be directing our anger at sin injustice, unrighteousness. And sometimes we need to be mad at ourselves because we've maybe placed ourselves in a wrong situation or said something that we shouldn't have said. And, you know, hopefully that anger will make us be more reflective and to turn ourselves around into a better direction. But, you know, like Darren, a certain someone we know, when we were dating, we've been dating about 2 months, and we got into a religious discussion. At that time, he was attending a Lutheran church, and I was, you know, a member of the North Ridgeville Church. And I never said this, but he put words into my mouth. He says, "You mean to tell me I'm going to go to hell?" So, you know, and I tried to tell him in a roundabout way that he was going to go in that direction, but he just came out and said it. And then he got mad, and he said, "I'm going to prove you wrong," and he didn't. And so 47 years later.
Yeah. But you were probably angry at that moment, right, Bruce? And your anger led to digging into that, and that was a good thing. All right. What does vented anger produce, and what does internalized anger produce? What kind of person are you if you're always venting anger? That's not exactly what the question asks, but that's what I'm asking.
The verse that came to my mind, Matt, is also in Proverbs 12:18. I can't see very well. There is one who speaks like the piercing of a sword, but the tongue of the wise promotes health. I remember the first time that verse really like sunk into me, and I realized how destructive anger could be, because that's usually when we use our words. At least for me, you know, I'm upset, I'm venting, and it can be very destructive and hurtful. And you don't mean that, you know, 15 minutes, half an hour later, you're maybe finally good to go. But what about that other person? What kind of damage have you done? So that's what I think of when I think of that kind of raging, venting, anger, uncontrolled, just like that, it just kind of finally comes pouring out. And so that's two sides of the, you know, like there's more to that question, but that's part of it.
So broken relationships, right? We're just yelling at people and we're hurting feelings when we ought not to be. Can hurt relationships. And what about the internalizing? If we're being so good that we're not yelling at people, we're holding it in, but that's not good, right? Go ahead, Bev.
Yeah, ulcers and stress.
Ulcers and stress, yeah. Bitterness, and we're probably breaking relationships too, because we're maybe clamming up and not talking things through when maybe not necessarily we should have an outburst, but we should talk things through, and that doesn't, holding that in doesn't help. Okay, number 8, is anything constructive ever said when people are angry? We feel like we've kind of touched on that, right? We've Bruce and Brenda's story, where am I going to hell, and all these questions leading to something constructive, where we study the scriptures. That'd be an example. Other thoughts on that? But out of control angry, I'd probably say no, but we've kind of qualified that, right? Number 9, can anger ever be appeased by going head to head against someone else's anger? Is that appeasing?
I think this is another one where we need to have strategies that we can, you know, pull out of our pocket if somebody walks up to us and suddenly starts screaming at us and we didn't even know we were in trouble. You know, maybe we need to brainstorm some strategies to have right at the tip of our tongue so that we don't twirl down into anger. also, whoa, wait a minute. Can we talk about this? Or I'm late for an appointment, but I'd love to talk to you. Can we get together for coffee, in an hour or two? Something, do something.
Yeah.
Have some strategies ready.
Well, the reference in the question here from Proverbs 15:18 says, a hot-tempered man stirs up strife, obviously, but he who is slow to anger quiets contention. So there's a strategy. Be slow to anger. Our other verse we like to quote, soft answer turns away wrath. So when that person's coming and freaking out at you, our strategy should be to not freak out back. Easier said than done, but that's the soft answer. So, then they're the one, they're freaking out, and then you're speaking softly and kindly, hopefully. And then what are they going to do? Are they going to react to you being soft? And are they going to continue to be the freak out? Well, they kind of like, you can be alone in your freak out there, and I'm going to talk quietly. It works sometimes.
One of the communication classes that I teach talks about disagreement and argument and all kinds of things. And we tell the students that if you've got two angry people who can't control it and they're arguing, but they're shouting and all of this, that isn't even what we call argument. That's a brawl. And nowhere. And the only way, a true argument is just logical, rational discussion and disagreement. And we're going to disagree, and there's nothing wrong with that. Chris and I disagree all the time, and we talk every day. She's laughing. We talk every day. So, but yeah, if you have two people going head to head, not listening, shouting, not even trying to reason with each other anymore, that's not even what we call argument. That's a brawl. But there is good, productive argument, but it's how you define it. So it's fine to disagree, and it's fine to butt heads over certain topics, and to kind of have people some things don't matter if you disagree. It's just a matter of opinion and perception anyways. Some things does matter, and so you have to be willing to dig into it and get to the bottom of it and see what the truth is. So but yeah, to answer that question, when you've got two people that aren't listening and aren't about to be open-minded to any type of reasonable discussion, you're getting nowhere.
You're just taking the temperature up with the yelling. All right, the last question here, as we're about out of time, it says, why can the self-disciplined man be trusted to rule others? And the verse there says, whoever is slow to anger is better than the mighty, and he who rules his spirit than he who takes a city.
I like this one because it leads into the next lesson really well. My answer for this is he has control over his emotions. His emotions don't control him. And while that has applied to anger, I think it's also going to apply to our next lesson on the broken spirit, where we need to make sure that our emotions are not what's controlling us. And that verse just wraps it up really nicely.
Very good. All right. Other thoughts?
Calm and in control, you can also be trusted to lead and make good decisions. And so you are able to rule a city or rule other people or lead other people. They're going to respect you. They're going to respond to you. They're going to look to you. So if you can stay level-headed and honest and have that kind of character, you are going to be put in positions where even if you don't seek out leadership or power, people will look to you and follow you and trust your guidance and maybe even come to you for advice. So I think that's part of that too, is if you rule yourself well, you do, without even knowing it, have an impact on the people around you.
Thinking about our country, you wouldn't want someone who's a maniac and loses their temper, to be in the chief executive role, where they're going to have access to launch a nuclear war. You know, we want someone level-headed there, and maybe we struggle to find that person. Hopefully.
Even a more practical
Right.
example, Matt, would be one of the qualities of being an elder of the church is that to
Mhm.
have that self-control, being in control of yourself, that kind of a thing. And that it makes perfect sense when you see the kind of situations that an elder would get himself into with regards to handling matters of the church and dealing with the people and all. Definitely going to have to be in control of your anger. You're going to be in control of yourself to even be, and that goes along with what this verse is talking about and what Karen was saying as far as being a leader. It's one of the most important qualities, really, other than well, they're all important, but it's an important quality.
Well, churches are always at risk of being divided, right, by all different heresies or whatever, and
Yeah.
so someone in a position of leadership and influence, like an elder, would have all the more power to destroy that, right?
Mhm.
So, of all people in those roles need to be having some self-control, right?
Mhm.
Very good. Okay, well, we're out of questions, out of time. We'll encourage you to be back next time, Lord willing. We'll, as Chris alluded to, the human heart, a broken spirit. The broken spirit will be the topic next week. So let's go ahead and Darren, if you would dismiss us with prayer.